Well, it's actually really only kicked off this morning, where there was a welcome address and several speeches by high-ranking officials from across the continent. This is, of course, as you said there, probably the greatest gathering on the African continent of energy users, suppliers in the oil, gas and all of those industries. We heard, of course, from our own Minister of Minerals and Resources, Gwede Mantashe, speaking about the just transition of energy. And he said that transition must take place at the pace that is beneficial to Africans and South Africans. He was not the only speaker that was talking about that. We heard from the African Union Commission saying as well that while the rest of the world speaks to Africa about the impacts of climate change, they must also remember that the entire continent's emissions is as little as 3.5%, and yet it's the continent that is the most affected by what is happening in the world. They're also speaking about COP17, that's a little bit more than a month away in November, saying that the question was asked a little bit earlier in a press conference, what would be the best outcome for Africa at that conference. And the consensus, I think, was that Africa should not be dictated to how it does the transition to greener energy, saying they must use what they have, which is coal, and also another opportunity, which many speakers alluded to and said is a great opportunity as a transition energy, is gas. We heard that 75% of oil and 45% of gas of Africa is exported, saying there's not enough done on the continent to develop markets for the use of these energy supplies. As you well know, Africa is well endowed with many, many resources. And we also heard from Minister Gwede Mantashe saying Western countries and regions that have benefited from the use for decades and centuries of Africa should help in the funding of the transition of energy use. But there must be no dictation as to how and when Africa is ready to transition or make full use of a greener energy. You used an example yesterday saying that Mpumalanga is is the coal center of South Africa. And if you all of a sudden stop using coal overnight, something like 10 towns would turn into ghost towns immediately. And he also said to remember on the back of that, and what we hear about the use of coal, fossil fuels, is that the export to EU markets of coal has increased 8-fold, as we've seen during the recent energy crisis as a result of the conflicts that's happening in Europe. So there's consensus among most of the speakers here from the continent saying that yes, Africa is committed to green energy and renewable energy sources, but that it should not be dictated to by the West and Western countries on how it should happen, when it should happen, and at what pace it should happen.